Alrighty, guys, this is Jim Collins, and welcome to another episode of Journey to the Pit. This is our normal every Friday type of deal at 9 p.m. where we talk about the game foul culture and lifestyle. So tonight we have another special guest like we do every Friday, which is Ronnie from the West Coast. So if y'all guys are new to the show, we have this show on every Friday night. And we just talk about different aspects of the breeding of our culture, you know, from the beginning to the end, from the hatch, you know, all the way to 2-3 years old. We talk about, you know, every aspect of the breeding of the sport and of our culture. So we bring special guests on that we can share knowledge, teach and learn from each other. So it's been going on for a couple months now. And actually, I think this is probably like the third month. So yeah, if y'all guys, if whoever's first time here, welcome. I hope y'all guys enjoy the show tonight. We got a special guest coming in like we do every Friday. That's right, Josh. We got a special guest coming in. His name is Ronnie from out on the West Coast. We're just waiting for Facebook to bring him in. But like I said, as always, you know, we have our special guest coming in. Just bear with me for a second because y'all guys know that I deal with Facebook issues every week. So this is going to be another great episode, man. If y'all guys hadn't looked at the event, you know, I did post some pictures of some of the birds that our special guest has, and they were just phenomenal. Beautiful birds, very, very healthy. I'm excited to have him on. I really would like to know the ins and outs of how you get those birds to look so beautiful, healthy. So he's been in the sport a long time, 30 plus years. I just put a little information in the bio of the event. So hopefully that stuff was helpful. If anybody has any questions of our special guest, y'all can definitely reach out to him after the interview. But we're going to get this interview started. I'm just trying to wait for Facebook to bring him on in. And you know, I had this problem almost every week. Okay, I think, let me see here. I think, no, that's not it. So we're going to just wait for him to come on in because it's not allowing me. I added him. I think it sent him the invite. So we're just waiting for him to come on in. But before we start the show, I always put the disclaimer out there so everybody know nothing in this interview is intended for any legal purposes. All the information in the interview is for educational, historical, and entertainment purposes only. And all opinions are respective of the individual. So we just waiting for Facebook to bring Ronnie in. I think y'all guys will be happy to hear from him tonight. We had a very, very great show last week, which was Mr. Don Lester. So that was a great show. It went 2 hours. I plan for these interviews between 45 minutes to an hour. It goes over every week. There's no problem. We just having a conversation, just educating ourselves, entertaining ourselves. So that's pretty much what it is. So, you know, I'm still waiting for Facebook to bring him in, and I don't know actually what's taking so long. So we'll see. What's taking so long to bring him in, but he'll be coming in soon. Guys, please, if do not request to be on the interview, because it's actually going to be taking up room for him trying to get in. So we're just waiting for Facebook to bring him in. I sent him the invite at 9, and it's been 5 minutes and still haven't brought him in. We did testing. The sound was good. The video was good. So this should be a great interview tonight. We just have to get Ronnie on, and I think, like I said, it'd be a great interview. As soon as I can get him to get on in here. Yeah, so it says that the invite has been sent. So we're just gonna wait for him to join on in. But in the meantime, how's the sound? Does the sound good? Is the video good? You know, guys, I straighten up a little bit of background, try to improve it a little bit, representing the U.S. mainland and Puerto Rico. Y'all guys know the history of that. Y'all guys have an idea too what Puerto Rico is going through right now, and how that last signing of that farm bill is affecting them. So we're trying to stand toe to toe with them and help them with this fight, doing everything we possibly can. They also greatly appreciate all the help that the Cockers from the mainland has given to them, and they just hope that we continue to support them And that's pretty much it on that. You know, I'm not going to get into any details about that because the show is not about that. But we maybe will have a show about that soon. Hey, we got St. Thomas. That's right, man. That's right. Warren, do me a favor, man. Share it. Start a watch party over there in St. Thomas. We need to bring this education to cockers all over the world. And y'all guys know, if y'all don't know, y'all know now, the number one goal with Journey to the Pit is to educate 1 million cockers from all over the world through education. Education will allow us to take these birds and this culture to a whole nother level. The more we educate, the better we can take care of these birds, the better the breed is going to be, the better the stag's going to be, the better the cock's going to be. It's just going to be better all throughout. So I don't know what is taking Facebook so long to send him this invite. Yeah, we got the time and everything lined up, man. We got the time and everything lined up. I looked in the app. It did send Ronnie, our special guest tonight, a invite. But for some reason, he hasn't got it or been able to get on. I don't know what the deal is with that, but it should be coming soon. Just hang on in there. And he'll be coming on. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a great interview. All the past interviews is great. Last week we had that interview. I think that interview got about 5,000 views. Might not sound like a lot compared to some other views, but, that's still a lot of views. Got 5,000 views. We kept over 100 people watching at one time, which was great considering the interview went 2 hours. And like I say, a lot of guys, they're at work, they watch it from their phone. Some of them lose charge, connection, all that type of stuff. But again, y'all guys know the interviews are posted to my page, my personal page, after the interviews are done. And then also, too, I do post the interviews over to all the groups that I'm a part of. There's a lot of groups out there that I'm not a part of. So if you're in a group that I'm not a part of, please share it, because again, the more information, here we go. Looks like Ronnie's coming in now. All righty then. So it looks like our special guest is coming in now. But like I said, again, please share the interviews, all of them. Go back to Journey to the Pit fan page. All of our past interviews is on there. It's a ton of information. All of it's free. It's coming from a lot of the heavy hitters all over this country. These guys has been in the trenches. Nobody's been handed no silver spoon. So a lot of these guys have learned a lot from doing it. So it's a lot of information that y'all guys can get. It's not costing y'all anything. And again, you can take what you can take out of it, and the rest of it just pass it on. But I promise you, every interview you watch, you will learn something. I don't care if you've been in this for 1 year or 40 years. It does not make a difference because things change. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And it looks like, Ronnie, how you doing, buddy?
How you doing, Jim? Good evening.
Great. Listen, can you hear me well?
I can hear you perfect.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
Everything is good. Guys, we just checking in, doing a sound check. Just make sure y'all guys can hear Ronnie. But Ronnie, I just told him I started it as we were waiting for you to come on in. One thing I need to do is definitely put the disclaimer out there before we start the interview. And all the information discussed in this interview is for historical, educational, and entertainment purposes only. None of this information is intended for any legal purposes, and all opinions are respected to the individual. So, Ronnie, let's go ahead and get on to it. I've been talking for the last 5 or 10 minutes, man, trying to wait for you to get in.
You go right ahead. You're doing a great job.
What was taking so long? I'm like, these people are not watching this interview for me. They're watching this interview for our special guest. But guys, let me introduce.
They don't want to see me.
No, they. Listen, guys. We'll introduce our special guest tonight. His name is Ronnie. He's hailing out from the West Coast. Been in the sport 30 plus years. Been in the sport way back in the day when the sport was totally legal in multiple states throughout the country. So he got many different aspects. He has spent a lot of time and got to know a lot of the greats in the sport, got to watch them perform, build relationships with them. So he has learned a lot about breeding, care, raising, and those kind of things. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So Ronnie, first, I did post, when I posted the event, I had to take some of your pictures, man, from your page and post some of them, man. And you have some beautiful, beautiful birds, look extremely healthy, well built, And so one of the things, we'll get into that later on in the interview. Obviously, somebody's going to know how you keep them birds looking so good. So let's start off, man. Starting off with little Ronnie at 3 or 4 years old, man. How did you get into the sport?
Well, I'll tell you, I got into the sport. I was quite a bit older than that when I actually got in. I was a lost soul, probably about 14 years old. And the way I got into the sport, I don't want to drag out the story, but I'll give you a little background. I used to walk my dogs down the street at this park down the street from my house.
Uh-huh.
And every time I'd walk my dog down there, this old boy that lived across the street would come out, and he'd come out and chit chat with me a little bit about the dog. And then I'd be on my way, and I'd keep walking my dog. And that was kind of a routine for me several times a week.
Right.
Well, quite a bit of time had passed, probably a few weeks. I hadn't been by there, and then I showed up, and I was walking through that park with no dog. And the guy came out. He was out in his front yard watering his lawn, and he noticed that I didn't have my dog with me. So he came across the street, and he said, "What happened to your dog?" And I said, "Oh, me and the dog parted ways. He went to meet his maker." And he could tell I was pretty upset about it. And he goes, "Oh, man, sorry to hear that, whatever." And we chopped it up a little bit. And he goes, "I'll tell you what." He goes, "Come here, man. Let me show you something." And so he walks me across the street from his park to his house.
Right.
And we walk in his backyard, and he's got 4 of the most beautiful green-legged grays in drop pins in his backyard. And I was just in awe. I just stood there looking at him and I couldn't even say anything. I was just looking at him, and I was like, whoa, I was like in awe.
Right.
And that's pretty much where it started. After that, I was over his house bugging him probably 2 or 3 times a week over there at his house, bugging the heck out of him, wanted to know more about them roosters,
Right.
And that's what started. Me and him became real good friends, and he actually gave me my first pair of chickens, which were the old Harold Brown green-legged grays.
Wow.
And that started it, man. After that, I was just like hooked. I mean, I would be in school. They'd be teaching, and I'd be daydreaming about how many green-legged grays I was going to raise out of that first pair I got.
Well, tell me this, Ronnie. How old was the guy? Was he an older guy?
He was he was about, at that time, I want to say he was probably about 36, 37 years old, somewhere around there.
Right.
So he was quite a bit older than I was.
Right.
He had two small kids, and was going through a divorce at the time. And he was just a real nice guy. Him and another buddy of mine, my buddy Scotty. Big shout out to Scotty out there in Arizona.
Okay.
We all became friends, and he was a pretty nice guy, man. He taught me a lot in the beginning stages about chickens. He got me, he gave me a big, huge head start because he had already been into it for quite some time.
Quite some time. I got you. Yeah. What bloodline was those that he first gave you?
They were the Harold Brown. He gave me the Harold Brown Grays first, and then he also gave me the Harold Brown Hatches. So I got a pretty good start because those were pretty good darn chickens, man, to have even back then. Not many people had real good roosters back then, and they were pretty good chickens.
So you got off on the right foot, huh?
I did. He got me off on the right foot, and at that time we lived within city limits, so we couldn't have a bunch of roosters in the city limits. And what we did is he ended up renting a place that was out like more toward right at the outskirts of the city limits out in the country.
Right.
There was a gentleman out there, rented him a spot out there, and we probably had about 50 or 60 cocks out there. And I would ride my bike. That was probably about a 3-mile bike ride, one way every day. Yeah, every day to go water them. I was like happy to do it too. I mean, It was like, I didn't look at it like it was work or anything like that. I couldn't get over there fast enough once I got out of school, to go over there and mess with those chickens.
Right. So tell me this, Ronnie. So actually nobody in your family, anything, are you first generation?
I'm first generation from my immediate family. Yeah, there's nobody else that's my dad wasn't into chickens, or neither was my grandfather or anybody. I'm first generation in my family into the chickens. Yes.
Okay. So Ronnie, tell me this: with the new guy that you know who got you into the game foul, you know, what were some of the things that stick with you today that you maybe have learned from him back then, starting out?
One of the things that he was a stickler for was health.
Mm-hmm.
So he instilled that. He never wanted to, you know, I mean, he wanted to make sure chickens were deloused regularly, dewormed,
Right.
all of those, you know, basic things, what you would call fundamentals.
Right.
I mean, he definitely instilled that in me. He didn't, when we went over there, we'd go over there on the weekends.
Right.
We would turn dirt and pins, you know, clean stalls out.
Right.
He wanted everything, you know, real nice and clean.
Right.
Chickens had to be fed at the same time every day.
Right.
That type of stuff. So,
Right.
you know, all important things, you know. Nowadays, it's funny because with all the technology and everything, nowadays, kids nowadays, they want to jump on a computer and Google something,
Right.
or get on YouTube or
Right.
whatever. And back in those days, you really had to befriend some of those old timers for them to, you know, teach you anything, you know, even the very basic things, you know.
Right.
A lot of guys nowadays get into the sport, and just because there's so much information shared over internet and Facebook and all of these things,
Right.
guys, you know, they share a lot of information. So some of those kids get a head start, but at the same time, they're missing the hands-on experience. So
Right.
you could tell a kid something and tell him to go do something, and he might do it completely different just because he don't have the hands-on experience. He don't really know what you're talking about.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. So tell me this. So you're around 14 years old. You start off with these two sets of pairs, and how long did it take you, man, for your yard to start growing?
It grew pretty quick. I'll tell you that. It grew real fast. Like the first breeding season that I bred them, next thing you know, I had, you know, I probably had 25 cocks or something like that, you know, 25 stags rather.
Right.
And so it grew real quick. And us not having out here, it can be challenging because we don't have a lot of wide open land
Right.
like some of the places back in the south and back east and like
Right.
that. So we're challenged as far as numbers, you know, unless you have a real big spread.
Right.
We're challenged as far as how many numbers we can raise. But
That's right. Due to the terrain, it's kind of like the same thing in Puerto Rico. It's kind of very challenging. Even if you live out, the terrain is so mountainous, and in some areas you just can't keep anything on besides vegetation. So you are kind of challenged on how many you can keep based on the space, because you got to keep them healthy. You can't cram them all in there because they ain't gonna stay healthy like that.
that's right.
So tell me something, Ronnie. So because I don't want to jump too far ahead, I kind of want to walk through a timeline,
Okay.
of your experiences. So you have your two pair, you have your two pair that you started off with. You started breeding. Back in those days, I'm pretty sure the sport back in those days were legal, at least in some states. Was there any well-known breeders in your area that you try to befriend?
Man, there was a lot of breeders back then we're talking, you know, the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, Copper State, it was wide open. I mean,
Right.
they had just moved Copper State to Ehrenberg, Arizona.
Okay.
And that was literally a 2-hour drive from Southern California to Ehrenberg, Arizona. So there was a lot of chicken guys
Right.
in Southern California, all over California,
Right.
you know, for that matter,
Right.
northern, southern.
Right.
So, yeah, no, Arizona was wide open at that time. So yeah, I actually got a chance to befriend a lot of pretty good breeders. There was a lot of good breeders at that time. One of the people that you'll hear, you know, so if you ask somebody about me, they're going to tell you, oh yeah, he's got Jesse Horta's chickens. Jesse Horta's a breeder down in Southern California.
Okay.
He'll be 90 years old in August, and he's been breeding. You know, he's been just a great breeder. A lot of people know him all throughout the United States, the Philippines, and Mexico.
Right.
He's well known all around the world.
Right.
And he's had a lot of the same families that he breeds. He's had them for many years. He had a great friendship and real close with Frank Steele.
Okay.
from Mississippi.
Okay.
And also Freddie Hunter, who was famed Alcatraz escapee.
Famed Alcatraz escapee?
Yeah, he was one of the guys that escaped from Alcatraz, but they did end up catching him. But yeah, he was in Alcatraz, and he was one of the ones that escaped from Alcatraz. Old Freddie Hunter. He actually worked for Red Richardson, who was known for the green-legged grays, the silver grays, the regular grays, and those are still the grays that we breed to this very day. That's where they came from. They trace back to Red Richardson. Jesse got those grays from Red Richardson direct.
Wow. So basically you have been trying to maintain, or you have been maintaining, kind of almost the same lines that you almost pretty much started with, huh? Or right after the first two sets of pairs.
Well, the first pairs I got came from the guy that I talked to you about. His name was Bob Anderson, the one that gave me the Harold Browns. But the Harold Brown grays do trace back to Red Richardson also.
Okay.
Jesse, not long after Bob got me into the chickens, I was probably 15 or 16 when I linked up with Jesse, and I met Jesse. And after that, me and him, I was over there at his place, even though he lived very far away from where I was at that time.
Right.
Me and him had a real good connection. Me and Jesse, right. we had my dad and his nephew were compadres. My dad baptized his kids, so there was a family kind of connection there. We're not blood related,
right?
But there was a family connection. He grew up in the same city where I grew up at. So he took a liking to me, I think, because of that partly, and kind of took me under his wing.
Right.
And at that time, by the time when I met him, I mean, he had already been in the game for a real long time. 2 generations for him. He had his grandfather was a well-known chicken guy down there in Southern California also.
Right. So tell me this, Ronnie. So that's pretty much kind of how you still kind of maintaining close to what you kind of started with, or after that first phase of what you started with. So let's now start talking about, how you keep those birds so healthy. And the first thing I would like to start, because, man, they look good, man. They look really good.
I'll be honest.
Not by chance, because a whole bunch of them look exactly the same.
I'll be honest with you, man. That don't happen by one man. And it goes back to, I watched the interview last week with Don. I believe it was Don Lester.
Right.
And man, a lot of the things that he said, I was like right eye to eye with him. He said there was a thing he said that made a lot of sense to me, and I believe in it too, where he talked about it takes a team to win. It takes a breeder, a feeder, a guy to be able to help.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing for us too. I mean, for me, I don't do it by myself. I got a real good team of real good friends.
Right.
And we all help each other out. But without them, I wouldn't be able to do nothing. And I'm just a small time backyard hobbyist. That is what I would consider. I'm by no means a big time breeder or anything. I mean, I don't breed 500 stags a year or 1,000 or 2,000.
Right.
I don't do it for a living.
Right.
I just do it because I enjoy to do it. I do it for myself. It's just been a great pastime for me. But we probably raise about 100, anywhere from 80 to 150 stags a year is what we raise. And even to take care of those, it takes a team, man. I got good people on my team. That's for sure.
Got you.
Shout out to my boy Alex and Freddie, David. That's all the Cowtown crew right there. They all make it possible.
Yeah, I think one of the Cowtown crew posted. He put a message on here that he was out there watering or something like that. So I think
he's out there watering while I'm sitting here doing this, huh? Throwing me under the bus.
No,
it's
man.
Too hot out there for me. I got my iced tea to drink.
Hey, listen, man. Everybody playing their role, man. Everybody's playing their role. And like I say, it definitely takes a team. But tell me this, Ronnie, before you got to that point, were you doing a lot on your own? You know what I mean? Were you tending to a lot on your own? Or
I have done a lot for years and years. and it's like what I tell, I tell my boy that helps me. I said, man, I did everything on my own for years, bred them, fed them, everything.
Right.
And man, it's a lot of work, especially, I have 5 kids. I have a business that I run. So, I mean, that's all, being able to balance all of those things, man, it's tough,
Yes,
to
it
be
is.
able to do it and do it, halfway decent. Probably not as right as Gator and some of them guys that got, man, he got a farm that's unbelievable. Him and
Right.
Mike, man, I mean, that place is impeccable. I mean, it's really nice. I
Yes.
haven't been out there in person, but I've seen lots and lots of pictures and live videos of it, man. And they got that place in tip top shape.
Yeah, that farm is unbelievable. And when I first went out there, I just couldn't believe it. And what I couldn't believe was not the amount of birds. What I couldn't believe was how clean he had that place with that many birds. Not, because there's a lot of places that got a lot of birds. And then the thing is it wasn't like he did a power cleaning. You can actually see that place been maintained like that. It ain't like he did a weekend clean before the barbecue clean. So this way when people come, the place ain't looking all crazy. You can actually look in the cracks and crevices in the corner, the condition of those pins, the wood. That place stays like that. That wasn't no power clean. And that's the reason why those birds look so good.
That says a lot about that man too. I mean, to me, that says a lot about that person. When they have a place that looks like that, a buyer comes up, wants to buy poultry.
Right.
They show up to a place like that, man, and that's where they want to get their poultry at.
That's
They
right.
don't want to go somewhere where, like you're talking about, chickens in water, 5 inches of water,
Yeah.
and beer bottles all over the place, and
Yeah.
all those type of things. That says a lot about that man, and kudos to him, because I mean he's done a lot in a little amount of time. He's
Yes.
really done a lot in a small period of time.
In a small period of time. And Jason is still young, man. Gators is still young. And you're right, he has done a lot in a short period of time, being so young. Ain't like he's been in the game 50 years. I mean, that dude, he has accomplished a lot, relocating to a whole nother place and stuff like that, and starting pretty much from, over. He has done great. So tell me this, Ronnie. So, you're doing a hunt between 80 to 150 stags. Let's just talk about, do you use incubators or do you use natural hatch? I know some guys, some it works for some people. It depends on how many birds that they breed. Or how about you?
I know absolutely zero about incubation, about using incubators. I
Okay.
don't I don't use incubators. I never really have ever. All my stuff is all hen hatched.
Okay.
Um, Not because I believe it's really better than the other. It
Right.
doesn't have anything to do with that.
Right.
It's just I don't need the numbers. I'm not trying to get those numbers. I don't want 500 stags. I don't
Right.
even want 300 stags.
Right.
So I'm not trying to breed those numbers. Um, and then the other thing behind the hen hatching is that was the way that I was taught.
Right.
So Jesse, I've never seen Jesse hen hatches 100%, even at his prime. When back in the day, I'm talking 20 years ago,
Mhm.
he was hatching out 500-600 stags a
Right.
year, hen hatching
Wow.
500 500 yeah 500 to 600 stags a year, and to this day I've yet to see somebody that can do that. And I learned a lot of tricks from him about hen hatching chickens out. I
And,
mean, there are a lot of little things. They're common sense things, but if you don't really take the time to think about them, you don't. It doesn't compute to your head to go and do something like that.
that's right. And no, Ronnie, that's a very, very good point, because like you say, you're not saying one is any better than the other. It's just kind of how you were taught. But that's a very interesting point, because I guess when you get to a certain number, you probably can't even, you're gonna have to probably use some incubator. Putting out 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000, I think you'll probably have to use some incubators then. But it's very interesting that he was able to put so many out, and doing hen hatch. So that's what I would like to talk about, because there's a lot of guys out there that's the same as you. It ain't too many gators out there. It ain't too many guys out there doing 1,000, stags a year. A lot of guys are probably doing 300 or less. I would say probably 200 at the most or less. The average is probably 200 or less. So let's talk a little bit about that hen hatching process. What type of process you use with the hen hatching?
Well, one of the big tricks, it's not really a trick, but I mean, guys that have been doing it for years, they know it's not a big trick, but one of the things that I do is I'll have hens in pens with nests with no rooster.
Okay.
Those hens will go setting on dummy eggs that are not fertilized.
Okay.
So I'll have hens setting. So I might have, just as an example, I might have 5 or 6 hens setting.
Right.
Right? And they've been on eggs that are not fertilized.
Got you.
Meanwhile, I have brood pens set up.
Right.
Single mated brood pens set up that I'm trying to get chickens hatched off of.
Right.
So meanwhile, I'm collecting eggs from those pens, getting eggs together, marking them. So what I'll do is, let's say I have those 5 or 6 hens setting, then I'll get all my eggs ready that I want to hatch out.
Right.
And I'll go and slip all those eggs under those dummy hens.
Right.
So I'll pull their eggs out, the bad eggs, at nighttime.
Right.
I'll go in there, slip the eggs out of the brood pens under them.
Right.
And I'll mark it on my calendar, and I'll have it so they all hatch out on the same exact day.
Wow.
So you have 5 or 6 hens hatch out on the same day. Let's say on average each hen hatches out 10 to 12 biddies, or 8 to 12 biddies, whatever. That's about, the average of what a hen's going to hatch out for. You may be up to 15. It just depends, but it's going to be somewhere in there.
Right.
All those hens will hatch out the same day, within a day's time. They all hatch out around the same time. So I'll go in and I'll pull those chicks. I'll mark them. And then what I'll do is, rather than have 5 different hens with 10 chicks apiece, I'll slip I'll break them into probably 2 hens. So I have 2 hens with 25 or 30 biddies apiece. And they'll all be marked and recorded. So it's not like you're getting them mixed up.
Right.
They're all going to be marked and recorded. You're all going to have them in your record book.
Right.
And then you consolidate from having so many different hens with so many different, instead of having a hen with 8 or 10 chicks, you got a hen with 30 chicks.
Got you. So tell me this, Ronnie. So basically, let's recap that. So you got your single mated brood pen set up. You got your about 5 dummy hens sitting on unfertile eggs.
That's correct.
So basically, what you do is go in at night when your eggs are after, mark your eggs inside your brood pen. You know who they belong to. They are all single mated. The eggs are all marked. So what you do is, once they hatch out, like you say, between 8 to 12 or 10 to 15 eggs, when you think they're done hatching, you take those marked eggs and you swap them out with the dummy eggs of the 5 hens that you have sitting on the dummy eggs, correct?
Yeah, you're gonna pull the dummy eggs all the same night. So those hens that have been sitting on those dummy eggs, before you go and put the fertile eggs on them, you're gonna go pull all those eggs, the eggs that are no good. You're gonna pull those out.
That's right.
Yeah, so you're gonna pull all them eggs out.
Right.
And then you're gonna put. So for instance, let's say hen number 1, you're gonna put Kelsos under her.
Right.
Hen number 2, you're gonna put Grays under her.
Right.
Hen number 3, you're gonna put Chets under her if you have them.
Right.
And hen number 4, you might put hatch Kelsos or whatever.
Right.
So all those hens, you're gonna set them all the same night. They're all gonna hatch off within a day's time. They're all gonna basically hatch off the same day, and you're gonna have that day marked on your calendar.
Right.
So when they start hatching out, that day in the morning, you're gonna go check them, and you're gonna see that they're gonna start hatching out. All of them are gonna be pretty close, as far as where they're at. The chicks are at.
Right.
And then once those chicks hatch out, then you pull the chicks, you mark them.
Right.
And you decide which hens you want to use for the surrogate mamas.
That's right.
And then you split the chicks up and put them under the hens. You got to be selective about what hens you put them under, though, because there's hens out there that, just like people, man. There's some bad mamas. there's hens that they ain't worth, they ain't worth the shit to be a mama, So you got to really be selective on what hens you want that can handle that many babies.
Got you. So Ronnie, tell me this: do you use the same hens season after season as far as on the dummy eggs, or?
Not necessarily. I not necessarily. I do have special hens that I know are really good mamas.
Right.
Really easy to go in and out of the pens. They're not trying to fly at your face and shuffle you in the face and the back of your head and all that.
Right.
Not super high strung and kicking biddies around and, doing all that business.
Right.
So I will try to be selective like that. But I mean, I don't just use those hens only. I'll use pullets that are coming up and, different ones like that.
Got you.
For the dummies,
Right. So, and you said that's pretty much how you were taught to do it, huh?
Yeah, that's kind of the system that I've seen Jesse. That's like one of his tricks on how he hatches out so many chickens and being able to consolidate them with one hen, like that, setting them the same day and all that. I learned all of that from him.
That's right.
I mean, that's what he does. He'll go and consolidate. He'll have a bunch of hens hatch out on the same day and then get those biddies and consolidate them all with one hen. You'll go over his place during breeding season. He'll have one hen with 40, 50 chicks in there.
Wow. And it works out, huh?
Yeah, it works out. It works good.
So tell me this, how do you pick your, well, you kind of went into that, I guess you can kind of tell what hens, or I guess you experiment, put them in there, see how they handle or deal with the chicks to determine if you're going to leave them in there or not, right?
Correct.
Got you. So tell me this, Ronnie, do you only do single mating?
Probably about 90%. About 90% single mating, especially if it's brood fowl. If I'm trying to breed brood fowl, get some straight ones, it's going to be 100% single mated.
Gotcha.
I have some show pins set up that I'll maybe might have two sisters with a rooster like that.
Got you. Okay. So tell me this, Ronnie. So you got your hens, you already hatched out. She in there, with say 20 biddies or whatever the case is. What do you do then? Do you change her diet? Like, what is your process from there?
So I have them set up in these little pens with those chicks, and I have a bunch of, they're actually little round pens that I have them in. Before I used to raise, I used to have at my old place, and that's actually was the best way to me. I had all these rabbit hutches, and I used to put them in those rabbit hutches when they were really little like this.
Right.
And I would get them up. I'd pull the hen from them about 4 weeks when they were about 4 weeks old.
Okay.
And then I'd get them up to about 6 weeks old, and I'd turn them loose.
Okay.
So they'd be free ranging at about 5, 6 weeks old. I'd get them up that big, and then I'd turn them loose because they were big enough to where when they're real small, they seem to be a little bit more susceptible to predators and stuff like that.
That's right.
When they're real little, even a magpie or a blue jay will fly down and grab one and take off with them. Got you.
Yeah. Got you. So tell me this, Ronnie. So you keep them with the hen, you said for about 4 weeks or 2 weeks?
No, I keep them with the hen for about anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, and then you shift them on over to the rabbit hutches. Well, but back in the day.
No, that was at my old place. Right now, what I use now is round pins, and it's inch by half wire. So the wire is really small wire.
Okay.
So the chicks can't get out of the wire.
Got you.
And they're round pins. They're 2 foot high round pins made out of 1/2 inch by 1 inch wire. And I have all the hens in there with the chicks. So I can go in there real easy. They're only 2 foot high. I can go in there real easy and change waters and feed them and all of that.
Gotcha.
And I can move them around on fresh ground. They're real easy to move around on fresh. We'll just walk over to fresh ground, grass, whatever I want to put them on.
That's right. Is there any particular bedding that you put in those pins, or is it just regular dirt, just fresh ground?
Just dirt. Nope, just dirt. No bedding, no nothing, just dirt. I'll run a little vitamins in the waters, a little antibiotic in the water sometimes.
Okay.
But I'm not one that's huge. I'm just now learning more about that stuff and using it, but I'm not a huge as far as like vaccination and all of that. I'm not doing that.
Okay. And it looks like it has kind of worked out good so far, huh?
It's worked. Jesse's thing always for years, and a lot of people couldn't do it. Just because people they just don't do it as far as the choline and stuff like that. But his saying was his medication is eradication. That was always his big saying. So he said, if there was some sick ones, that's it, they're gone. That's how you take care of it. And one thing you got to keep in mind is a chicken has to be able to have a natural defense system without depending on antibiotics. You want to hit them with this, hit them with that, hit them with this, hit them with that. If one goes down on you and he gets really sick and then you medicate him back into shape, sometimes he's not the same individual that you started off with.
That's right, because I have had some with the same. You're exactly right. Some of them do. It just depends. Some of them do, but you're right. Sometimes when you medicate them back to health, sometimes it'd have been better off just calling them from the beginning. Some of them recover well, but a lot of times when they're young and they get sick like that, it's best to just go ahead and just let them go.
Yep.
So that's what Jess, you said, man. That's something that you kind of learned from him, huh?
Oh yeah. I mean, any bit of little success that I've had in this sport has probably 90% of it been because of him or something that he showed me or taught me or that I learned from him.
Right.
Or being around other old time guys like that. That's Johnny right. Bishop and Harold Babcock and some of those guys.
Okay, so Ronnie, tell me this. So we got the biddies, they 6 weeks, 8 weeks old. You said you start free ranging around what age? 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, about 4 to 6 weeks old. I'll start free ranging them. Okay. And all I do is, so the little round pens that they're in,
right?
I'll just put like a brick in under it, like that, and lift it up.
Okay.
And I'll still have their waters in there.
Okay.
And they'll run in and out at first. They'll come, they'll go in and out, in and out, in and out. They'll run around.
Right.
And it's funny, at nighttime, they'll still go back in there
right.
at first.
Even so, when you first start free ranging them, they, just through nature alone, they still come on back, I guess, for the first little time that they be in free range.
And you know what's the funny thing about this that I always find it interesting? Somehow, the majority of them will make it back to the pen that they started in, even though I'll have 15 of those little round pens like that set up.
Right.
And they'll be running loose like that, but they'll still go back to the pen that they originally started out in.
Gotcha.
At nighttime. And I was like, man, how do they figure that out? That's the pen they belong in,
That's that nature, huh? They came out
of
that
I don't know. I guess so.
Down, 10 rows down behind a tree and all that, and they still passed 5 other pins to go back to that one that was around a tree down a hill.
Exactly. Eventually, they'll start, roosting up high, roosting in the trees and flying up on the fence and wherever they can, make their way to. Gotcha. But that's the way that I do it.
So tell me something. With them out there free ranging and stuff like that, you said you have the water inside the little round pens. How about feed? What type of feed or system you start them off with?
I start them off with a crumble. And they'll eat that for that crumble. I have them on that crumble for probably about 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks?
Yeah, I have them on that crumble for about 2 weeks, and then gradually I'll start mixing in some scratch with that crumble.
Okay. Tell me this, Ronnie. Do you use medicated or?
The last few years I have been using that medicated crumble, but not because I think it's a super great thing. Mm-hmm. It's where I go and buy feed. That's what they got. So, I haven't had a problem with having a bunch of chicks get sick or anything like that on it. So it's been working pretty good.
Right, right. So tell me something. Do you see a difference, or is just the availability is what you got while you using it?
It's just worked well for me. I don't know if I know other guys use a turkey grower or use this kind of specific brand.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't really experimented a whole lot as far as going to another brand and
Mm-hmm.
feeding that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a feed down there, down in Southern California. There's a game bird crumble that they make down there. Man, that stuff definitely. I don't know what it has in it, but man, it makes them chicks grow really quick.
It does, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what's
So
the name
there
of
is
it?
some. I don't remember the name of it, but there is definitely, I'm sure, some crumbles out there that are better than others.
Right, right,
You know.
right.
But that's the one I've been using is that same one, and it is medicated.
It is medicated. Okay.
It says it's medicated, but I've heard a lot of guys say that medicated feed really doesn't have enough medication in it to really do too much anyways, you know, to help them out.
That's right. That's right. So is there any particular ingredients or anything inside that medicated, or is just pretty much what you just been feeding them at that time?
That's it. I just give them that medicated feed, and then like I said, I'll start mixing in some scratch with it, and then pretty soon I'll mix it 50-50 with what I'm feeding. They're like the regular chicken feed,
Okay.
daily ration.
Okay.
Yeah, I get them on that. I mean, I'll mix some of that in. I mean, they'll still be real small, but they eat that like, you know,
like everything else.
No problem. Yeah, they eat it up like everything else. I never have a problem with them eating it up.
Right, right. So tell me this, Ronnie. So okay, so boom. So we here now. They're big enough to eat half and half. You know, half scratch or a half yard feed plus half of those crumbles. You know, what age do you pretty much transition them off of those crumbles and start giving them the other feed?
I would say they're probably when they're just getting 100% just feeding, no more crumbles.
Right.
I would probably say they're probably 3 months old.
3 months. Okay.
Yeah, probably between 3 and 4 months old.
Okay. Okay. You pretty much got them on just regular feed by then, huh?
Yeah, just regular feed. They're free ranging. They're out there loose. They better find a way to feed themselves. There's bugs and all kinds of good stuff out there for them to get.
That's
so they find a way. They, you know, between that and the regular ration, they do pretty good.
So tell me something, Ronnie. You said you don't pretty much use too much vitamins or anything like that in their water, anything?
Not a whole lot. Not like a regiment. I mean, I will run it through the water, but I don't have like a system or a regiment, you know, where I'm like, okay, this many days a week I'm giving them this many days a week. I don't got anything like that going on. I mean, we'll run some vitamins through the water when they're small, and I'll do some antibiotic, you know, through the water too.
Right.
But I'm not real like, I don't have like a set regimen on that.
Okay, so you kind of just do what's needed at that time, whatever you feel as though is needed.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the feed now. So now they're in their regular yard feed. What type of yard feed do you use?
I mix my own stuff.
Okay.
So I mix my own feed. Basically, my feed consists of 3 different pallets.
Okay.
Whole corn, whole oats.
Okay.
Wheat.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Okay. So Ronnie, tell me this, and I know we talked a little bit about it. You know, we talked a little bit about, you know, it's certain things like in a premix feed that you felt as though is not really digestible for a chicken. What were you kind of talking about on that?
Well, that's just been from my experience, and you know, I'm not saying, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I've always believed that there's no one right way to do things in this sport.
That's
what
right.
works for one man may not work for the next, and I'm a true believer of that. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Right.
You know,
right.
Even when it comes to feeding and breeding and all of that, everybody's going to have their own way of doing things.
That's right.
My experience has been when feeding chickens, nutrition is huge with chickens, and I think it's one thing that a lot of guys overlook.
Right.
Of the actual feed that they put into their chickens.
Right.
Because feed will make you or break you.
Gotcha.
It will make you or break you. some of the Gamecock mixes, the formulated ones, they have stuff in them that really a chicken probably shouldn't be eating. Some of those real hard grains, the lentils, a lot of the hard grains. The chicken doesn't eat that stuff out in not in his natural habitat.
Right.
So, you know, if you're feeding them stuff like that,
right,
you'll find that a lot of times they can't digest that stuff. It'll get caught up in what they call that blind gut.
right,
And man, it'll wreck you. It'll wreck you. A lot of guys, unless you got a lot of experience,
right,
guys will be having trouble with their chickens.
right.
Like when they're taking them to the show and stuff, and they can't figure it out, and they don't know what it is. And if you trace it back, it'll go back to that.
To that feed.
To that feed.
Yeah, and
it's got to be something that's palatable for the chicken that he can digest. Go through them, still give him the nutrition that he needs.
Right.
But that he can pass and go through his digestive system.
Right. That's a great point, because sometime on a premixed feed, they're adding stuff that looks good on paper, you know, basically saying, hey, you know, because all protein ain't the same. We know that, you know, but it looks good on paper. It looks good on the back of the bag as far as the percentages, you know, X amount of percentage of protein and fiber and fat and all this and that. But you also got to be conscious of where they're getting that protein, fat, fiber, where they're getting all that stuff from, like what ingredients in there. And some of that stuff is fillers. You know, they're not going to put 50 pounds of totally good stuff in it. Some of that stuff in that bag is fillers.
Yeah, for sure. There ain't no doubt about that.
Right.
A lot of it is fillers because they want to be able to make a profit and push a profit off of that.
That's right.
Off of that feed.
Right.
You know, a lot of pellets. If you can come across, you know, a place that puts out a really good pellet.
Right.
You know, a pellet is real digestible for a chicken.
Got
some guys don't. You know, they're not hot on the pellets. You know. But some guys like feeding a lot of hard grain, and they think that's the way to go. And, you know, everybody's got their own way to do it. So you got to do what works for you.
That's exactly right. And I met somebody, a successful cocker, and all he feed is pellets. I'm like, what? Are you serious? He said, man, all I feed is pellets. And it works. I mean, it works for him. The birds were beautiful. They look good. They look healthy. They very active. He's very active. And, I mean, he said, all I feed is pellets. And a lot of guys like, I don't believe that. You go to his house, that's all you'll find is pellets. You know, and I'm just like, wow. But it goes back to, like you say, everybody does things different. You got to adapt it, you know, adapt the situation to whatever you're able to do. And you can't feed everything the same way. I think we talked about that in the last video with Don, how you can't even feed all the birds the same way. A lot of times, especially if you got multiple different bloodlines, you can't feed all of them the same way.
Different bloodlines have different metabolisms. Mm-hmm. It's like people, you know. Sometimes you get some of those green-legged families, maybe some green-legged, some hatches or grays, green-legged grays.
Right.
And you can even look at them and watch them and study them in the pen.
Right.
And they're just not as active as maybe a Kelso or a Roundhead.
Right.
So you know that they run on two different motors. You know, this motor over here is more like a diesel, you know, motor over here, where that one's a high octane over there. You know, that other one over there, he's going, you know. So if he has a high fast metabolism, he's going to go through that feed a lot quicker, where that other one may not. It may take him a lot longer for that feed to move through him because he's not as active.
And that's when it goes back to, like you said, feed is so important. Not just the type of feed you feed in them, but also the amount of feed that you're feeding them.
Absolutely. And the guys, you know, guys that have been feeding for a long time, you know, they know when, you know, they get certain families of different chickens. You can't get all these different families have a mixed show, and go in there and want to feed them all the same and think that, you know, they're all gonna come out the same. They're gonna give you the same results.
Right. That's right.
Because you got all kind of different, you know, different families. They act different.
That's right.
They got different metabolism to them.
Yep, they got a different metabolism to them. So basically, so how many bloodlines now do you have? Are you breeding?
I bet you some guys are laughing right now. I know who too. My buddy Mike's probably like, "Oh, don't ask him that question."
Oh,
I got 5 main bloodlines that I've had probably for going on 18, 19 years
okay.
that have came from Jesse. And I probably got about another 3 or 4 bloodlines that I experiment with, or
Right.
make some experimental crosses, just like anybody else.
That's right.
Um, yeah, so five families that I've had for a real long time. The little blue face hatches that are called blondies that come from Jesse, the
Okay.
regular grays, the Kelsos, Frank Steelblood,
Okay.
the Chets.
So tell some
And
of us about the Chets, man, because I see some comments on here. They want to know what the Chets are. I know you made a comment earlier if they had them.
the Chets is just an old. You know what it is? It's an old family, and it's an old family chickens that was made in California. I think it's one of the only actual families that was actually made in California.
Okay.
They go back to the 40s. That's when they were made,
Okay.
like mid to early 40s.
Okay.
And Jesse's grandfather he got the Chets from the guy that actually was one of the guys that actually made them, who was Joe Wolf.
Right.
Joe Wolf used to feed roosters for Chet Robinson.
Okay.
Chet Robinson was the chief of police in Arcadia, California, which is in a little area where we're actually from.
Okay.
So I'm kind of tied to those Chets.
Eh.
Like, they got some sentimental value too. That's another reason I have them. But they're basically like a green-legged roundhead is the best way I could explain them. They come anywhere from like a hatchy, mottle-breasted hatchy look to a real pumpkin sunshine orange color.
Wow.
And they're small birds.
Okay.
But really the characteristics are more like a roundhead.
Right.
A lot of guys know that I have them, and I got them from Jesse, and Jesse got those Chets from his grandfather. So he's had them a real long time, and he's told me a lot about them. Basically,
Right.
what he told me when I've asked him, we've talked about it. I mean, several different times for hours and hours.
That's right.
About how they were made up. He basically said there's nobody alive that knows exactly what went into them Chets.
Gotcha. They just know the end result of what they turn out to be.
They have and continue to have. I mean, they continue to do good all over.
Right.
Their best cross is with a good hatch bloodline.
Wow. And you said they're small. What size you talking about?
Man, they could be anywhere from. I personally haven't got one 5 pounds for a long time.
Wow. So they all in the 40s.
So anywhere from maybe 310 to 412.
Wow. Okay. And what color did you say they were again?
They're anything from pumpkin to like a mottle-breasted hatch looking, but mine mostly are gonna be pumpkin colored because I've really bred most to that side to the more pumpkin ones. Rarely ever will I get one that looks like a little hatch rooster. Some of them will look like that, but I rarely get one that looks like that. Maybe 1 in 50.
Okay, I got you. So tell me this, Ronnie. So we got the bird. They stags now. We talked about the feeding kind of regimen that you use. Do you use tie cords or pins or both?
Once again, just because of our demographics and everything, we're almost obligated to have more pins than tie cords.
Just because of geographical location.
Just the whole geographical thing. We're very limited on tie cords and how many tie cords we have. So I would say probably 80% pins.
Okay, I got you. 80% pins. Okay, and what size are your pins, Ronnie?
I use a lot of the Metro by Metro, so it's like a almost 40-inch by 40-inch. That's going to be like a typical stag holding pin for me.
Okay. And do you, when they turn the cocks, do you go to a different size pin, or that's pretty much the size pin that you run throughout the yard?
They're gonna probably pretty much stay like that. They're gonna molt out in there, and then when they cock out, then I'll rotate them into fly pins, the bigger size pins.
Got you. So tell me, Ronnie, with the way your birds look, is there anything, any little tricks? Because is that just feed? Because I mean, I see some dusty roosters on so I see some dusty roosters on Facebook, so it can't just be feed. You know what I mean?
Man, I you know what? The only thing I could really honestly say is that's all Jesse Orta. That's years of him breeding. You just have to know the man. He's like no other. I mean, I've been all over the country and met all kinds of breeders, been to all kinds of rooster yards. I used to go to Louisiana every year when Louisiana was wide open.
Right.
I mean, I've been all over, and I've never met another chicken man as meticulous and a breeder that's as selective as he is.
Right.
And so I would have to say that all goes back to his breeding, and all I've been able to do is just maintain and do what he told me to do, and how he told me to breed them. And I by no means consider myself a breeder at all, because a real breeder, you have to breed up a lot of chickens,
right,
to be selective and have an eye and be able to choose the right individuals. You have to have a bunch of them to be able to select those elite individuals, where sometimes I'm stuck picking from 4 or 5,
right,
straight ones. That's not a breeder to me. To me, a breeder needs, you trying to get some straight ones and find a brood cock, you better have 20 suckers lined up,
right,
and you better watch them every day to see which ones. There's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 of them roosters out there that are going to catch your eye. The same thing with the hens.
Right.
You don't want to try to pick one that's spooky acting, that runs to the back of the pen every time you walk by there.
Right.
You want her to act good, and she has to be right. She has to look right.
Right.
Good body on her, good eyes, all of those things.
Right. So Ronnie, tell me this, and talking about that, because that makes a lot of sense. What type of particulars, like maintenance, since you're trying to maintain what Jesse has already created, what type of particular things or characteristics you look for in a hen?
In a hen?
Yes.
A hen, I like hens that are not necessarily, a lot of guys like hens that are like almost act like roosters.
Right.
Like they're almost like cocky acting.
Right.
And I kind of gravitate towards the opposite. I like a hen to be more feminine looking.
Mm-hmm.
Good, put together good.
Okay.
One of the main things that's gonna really is how she acts with her chicks. If she's a good mama.
Got you.
Because if she's wild acting with her chicks, and if she's wild in the pen, that's gonna be one that I'm not gonna breed again. If I did breed her, I'm not gonna breed her again.
Right. Because I'm high maintenance.
She's not mentally right.
Got you.
So
you look.
That's one of the factors that I look for.
Right. So you're looking for something not just feminine looking, but also mentally stable. Not all erratic.
Mentally stable. Yeah, mentally stable. That she's not wild and crazy and trying to fly out the pen when you walk by there, or when you go in there to grab the rooster out.
Right.
If you're rotating the cock, and you're single mating, you're rotating the rooster.
Right.
You go in there. She's not flying all over and acting crazy.
Got you.
That's important to me. Everything else that I think most people look for: a good, nice, straight keel bone.
Okay.
Good eyes.
Got you.
Good station, but doesn't have to be tall. I'm not one of them guys that's stuck on breeding tall roosters. Everybody will tell you. I mean, my roosters are like medium station. I'm not stuck on having real tall chickens.
Okay. So you good with a medium station hen?
Yeah. Medium station is fine with me.
Feminine, medium station, and when you say eyes, is there any particular color? Red?
Well, ideally, we all love to look at them red eyes.
Right.
If they have red eyes, that's a plus. I can't remember me ever picking a hen that had light eyes. So I guess red would definitely have to be between an orange or a red color for me to pick her, you know, that would definitely have to be in there.
Got you. Got you. So Ronnie, so now let's shift over to what you look for in your cocks. Like, you know, is it any, as far as station, you know, body structure, eye color, all that?
All of those things that you just named, very similar to, you know, as far as the hands, as far as the straight keel bone,
Right.
you know, decent station to them. The cocks, one thing that I really look for in a rooster is a rooster that has a great consistent attitude all the time.
Okay.
I love roosters. I love roosters that when you're over near them, they'll cut wings to you. They'll talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost telling you, "Come and pick me up, Daddy. Come and get me."
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
I'm not gonna choose a rooster that if I walk by there, he's trying to shoot out the other side of the pen or something like that.
Right.
I'm not gonna pick something like that to breed. And another thing I want to point out is you will get a rooster, like you could have 10 brothers.
Right.
And they could come from the best, gamest family there is,
mm-hmm.
and you can get one brother out of those 10 that will be a goofy acting son of a gun. And you won't even believe that he's brother to them other 9 of them.
Right.
And if you don't have an eye to you know, weed him out,
right,
if you breed that one, that's where a lot of guys make the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm saying, to be a breeder, you have to have a selective eye. You have to know which ones to breed and which ones not to. Just because he's a pure this or a pure that and they're the gamest around, that doesn't mean nothing.
That doesn't.
You gotta be able to spot them, you know, spot the right ones and make sure that they make it to the brood pens and not the other ones.
That's exactly right. And you're right. I mean, that's selective. That's what separates everybody, is the ability to select. I know we talked to Tyler Easterland, and he talked about, you know, his family thinks that he's probably one of the best selectors, you know, in the Easterland family. And like he say, it's something that he learned, but, you know, and also, you know, from his father and grandfather, stuff like that. But that selecting is what separates the guys. You got some guys that go out there and breed just because of their wing band, or breed just because, you know, they came from this breeder and this is the trio I got. You can't always, none of that stuff eliminates the responsibility of you having to still select. It doesn't matter where you get it from and what bloodline it is. You still have to select. You just can't breed it because it hatched out and it grew up and it's now as a cock. That's not a reason to breed it.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Another thing, going back to that, and me telling you that I don't consider myself a breeder. Mm-hmm. I do the best I can and try to, you know, follow what I was taught as far as breeding and selecting and all of those things. But another thing that helps me in a great way maintain those chickens and you know, maintain them at a high level, not only looking at them, but, you know, being able in what they can do, is going back to having a good team, having good friends. I have a real good friend of mine who's a real good breeder. Has the same bloodlines. Maintains the same bloodlines. Was schooled by Jesse also, so he follows pretty much the same guidelines.
That's right.
And me and him trade back and forth. So we have a place to go back and forth. And when you do that, when you got somebody that you can go to and do that, mm-hmm. that's almost like putting new blood, even though it's the same blood. Once you take a family out of a certain place and you take them to a different state and breed them, and you got them on different soil, different feed, it changes the chickens.
That's right.
Tremendously. Every different soil you put them on they have different minerals.
Yeah.
It's got different pH. It'll do different things to the chickens. I've seen it change leg colors, feather colors, different things. It does different things to chickens. But going back to what I was saying, he breeds chickens, and me and him trade chickens back and forth, and that helps them chickens continue even without putting any new blood in.
That's right.
From a different bloodline. Mm-hmm. It is like putting new blood in, because they've been away for so long. Now you come back and hit them with that.
Yep.
It pumps them back up.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's a great point. And a lot of successful breeders do the same identical thing. They always say, "Hey, if you can have somebody, if you starting something off, if you can send some somewhere else and let them get raised on a different soil in a different area, it makes a big difference." And you're right, man. That soil, all of that stuff affects them. There is, it's a lot of things, a lot of attention to detail that a lot of guys overlook, and they just think I think they oversimplify. Some people complicate it too much, and then some people oversimplify it. But it's things like that, just having the same bloodline, even if they're hatch brothers, being raised in a different place on a different soil, even if they eat the same food, just being raised in a different place in a different soil makes a difference, and they can kind of bring that back to your yard, and like you said, is infusing something, nothing different, the same genetics, but it's all that other stuff that's going to come with it.
Exactly. Like I got a buddy that lives probably a couple hours away from here, and his chickens on his place, the soil where he has them at,
Right.
super high in iron. His chickens have really dense bones. The spurs, you can hardly run a spur saw through the spurs on his roosters.
Wow.
Just because the bone, the bone is so dense from being on that soil. It's really high in iron.
Really,
And so it changes the makeup on the chicken, especially after they've been on that for years.
Right. That's right. It kind of changes somewhat genetically, where they'll start producing birds with more denser bones, huh?
Absolutely.
So now we got to the phase of we went through the biddy phase, the hatching, raising, starting off with the biddies, getting them up to stags. Now we got them in cock. So basically, what you're saying is, obviously, it's definitely good health. Good feed, fresh water. I'm assuming every day.
Fresh water.
Day. And
fresh water, good feed, all of that stuff goes hand in hand. And you gotta do it 365 days a year. It can't be, well, I'm gonna do it part-time, or I'm gonna do it well they got feathers, but when they don't got feathers, no, it's too hot, I'm not gonna get out there and water. It's a sacrifice, man. When you drug that water hose for enough years, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's a sacrifice whether you have 50 or you have 500 or 5,000.
That's right.
It's work. It's work.
That's exactly that's exactly right. It definitely is work, and it ain't no way around it. There is no shortcut, and it goes back to, like we talked about, that's what the journey to the pit is all about. It's all about the foundation, the hatching, the raising, the watering, the feeding. All of that stuff is a foundation, because at the end of the day, when you get to that destiny, none of that stuff matters if you haven't taken care of them throughout that journey.
That's right. That's going back to something that I seen Johnny Jumper say, piggyback off of that. He said that part of it that you're talking about is a very small part of it. That's right. The other part is the bigger part, raising them from an egg, a chick.
Yep.
It takes them 2 years before you can even look at them and think about, going to the show with them.
Right.
That's the bigger part to it. So, to raise them, it's easy for a guy to go and buy them or, purchase them. But when you raise them from an egg all the way up and until they're old enough for you to go and go to the show and take them and enjoy them, that's a bigger part of it to me.
That's right. That's exactly right. And not only that, if I tell guys, if they want to increase the quality of their birds or the quality of the performance of the birds, the place to look is in that raising period, that journey. Because a lot of guys say, oh, if you ain't got good birds, whatever, get a better brood pen. Well, you can get the best brood pen you want. If you're not doing that in-between phase, brood pen does not matter. It's not that simple. It's not just going to buy a trio from a top-notch guy that got excellent birds, game his family, very consistent over decades, all that. Then you bring them to a place and you're very inconsistent on his raising. I have seen guys who take birds who used to being raised in a clean environment, and then they go to the other side of the country and they being raised in a bad environment, not clean, not fresh water. Then the birds don't do good at all. They start breaking down, falling apart. You're like, man, what is wrong? Why is this guy calling back complaining that the birds no good, the birds getting sick? And you never had that issue because genetically, some of those birds, all the birds adapt to the environment that they've pretty much been raised in. So when they go off somewhere else and they raised in a completely substandard environment, it's not the breeder at all. And guys just don't understand that.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you're not gonna, if a guy doesn't got it in him to give him that 365 and give it everything he has, he's probably better off just going and just buying them.
Yeah.
And as and not trying to raise them himself. Let somebody else raise them up. And, like that. And take them, because it's a lot of work, man. And you gotta like what you do. It can't be one of those things. Like you look at it and you're like, oh man, I gotta go do this. Oh man, I gotta go do that. If you like these chickens, man, you're gonna love what you do. You're gonna look forward to going out there and watering them and messing around with them. I can go out there and just sit down and look at them for hours.
That's right.
And be in my own world.
That's exactly right. And that's the reason, I get a lot of messages a lot of times, and guys kind of want to know the last phase and all that. And I say, listen, the last phase is not important if you haven't did the first 3 phases. Phase number 1 at the end is totally irrelevant. That's why it's the smallest part, and it's always at the end. All the other stuff up until that is really what's important. And I think a lot of times, especially in this day and age, like Don said last week, it's easier to get good blood. It's easier. Everybody got access to good blood. A lot of times you can't out-brood pin nobody, because the same place you got yours from, he can go to that same place and get that same brood pin. It's all of the stuff in between. And I cannot stress that enough, because it seems like in this day and age, everybody want to talk about the beginning and the end. And there's no in between. They want to talk about the brood pin or how to point. Well, how about everything else? You know what I mean?
That's the most. Everything else is the most important part. That's the whole health part. If you haven't given them the care and throughout the whole year, then what's the use of the other 2 things almost don't matter.
It does not matter. The breeding does not matter, and pointing does not matter. So tell me this, Ronnie. When do you start, or like what type of, do you do a worming regimen, delousing and all that kind of stuff? You said Jesse was really big on.
Yeah. So the worming, I'm pretty strict on the worming as far as worming regimen, and I rotate different medications. Like when they're in the molt, I'll give them worming medication that I can put through the feed.
Okay.
Valbazin. Okay. That type of stuff, levomyosol. I'll do those type of things in the feed and give it to them, run it through the feed during the molt.
Right.
And then when they got feathers on them and I can actually grab them, then I'll, rotate other medications through them,
Right. Do you worm once a month, or?
I'll worm about every 2 months.
Every 2 months.
During the season, when they got feathers on them.
Right.
I'll worm them every 2 months just as a regimen, and then if I got some roosters, that I'm working with or whatever, well then they're gonna get worms, a lot more than that.
That's right. Got you. So tell me this, right? So you say you breed about 1,000 stacks. So we and I'm gonna kind of just recap, just go back through the beginning. So we talked about, pretty much you do single mating.
150 stags.
150. Okay.
Tops.
150 tops. So we got single mate. 90% of your stuff is single mated. All natural hatch. You do use dummy hens to do your natural hatching. Mm-hmm. You said now you use the round pins, but back in the day you used to use the rabbit. You said the rabbit
hutches.
Right.
Rabbit hutches. And they were up off the ground. They had legs. Okay. And they were up off the ground, man. They worked good. They had wire screen on the bottom, so all the droppings fell down.
Right.
They worked really, really, really good.
That's right.
Guys used to come to my place, and they had seen people raise biddies all kinds of different ways. I mean, I've seen them raised different ways too, in brooders and in fly pens and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And they were like, man, that's a slick way to raise babies, because you got the mama in there with all the chicks.
Right.
They were super healthy.
Right.
Nothing was gonna get in there and get them.
That's right.
The chicks couldn't get out.
That's right.
And it was perfect. It worked perfect. I could go in there and grab the mom and take her out when she was ready to, when I was ready to take her out. The chicks were in there, and then I could just cut them loose after that, and it just worked perfect.
That's
the chicks
right.
did real good. The healthiest chicks I ever raised were out of those rabbit hutches.
Wow.
Bar none.
And you probably well, I can see that because a lot of those outside elements they ain't even have to worry about dealing with, right?
Right. Right. They had little roofs on them. I think I might have had 12 of them, 12 of those little hutches like that. So every time, I might have had like 20 chicks in with a hen on each one of those things.
Gotcha.
So I probably had 250, chicks amongst those, 12 hutches.
12 hutches. And you still did the consolidation system, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've done that for years. The consolidating and the dummy hens.
Right.
I've been doing that for a long time.
Got you. So tell me this, Ronnie. So we got now, we got through the phase, you got the biddies, you let them out, you said about 6 to 8 weeks, they're pretty much starting, and that's when you prop up the pins, use the little small 2-foot high pins, you put a brick up under them so they can come in and out when they want to pretty much start the free ranging. When they start free range, you said they typically get back to the pin that they started out with at the beginning. And then from that point on, they'll start finding other places to roost as they get a little older. You said the feeding regimen that you start them off with is with the crumbles. And you said when they get about 3 months old, you start to shift to 50-50.
Yeah, 50 of my normal ration, yard ration, and 50 crumble.
50
with
crumble.
But before that, I do mix in a little bit of just regular hen scratch into the crumble, just so that they start getting used to eating grain. So that has the hen scratch is composed of a cracked corn, a Milo, a wheat. Yeah, that's pretty much all it has in it.
Okay, so tell me this, Ronnie, what type of feed, like what percentage protein do you feed your normal yard feed?
My normal yard feed right now is at about 15.75, almost 16%. Okay. It's about 15 3/4.
About 15 3/4. Now, do you feed the same all year long?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't. The only thing that I change on that feed is the amount of corn in the hotter months.
Right.
I'll back off the amount of corn that I put in it.
Okay, during the hotter months. So out there in the West Coast, are you having extreme weather? Does it get extremely hot out there?
It can. It's been like this year. We had an abnormal amount of rain out here. Wow. It rained a lot, and it seemed like we went from that to extreme heat.
Right.
There was no in between. Usually, it'll ease into the heat months to the hotter months, summer months. But this year, it just went from raining to extremely hot.
Wow.
And it was a tough year for the chickens, because it did a number on the babies for sure, because we got a lot of rain, and even when I hatch, I don't hatch anything off really early just because of that, because I hen hatch, and it still got us. It was still raining, in May, the end of May, it was still pouring rain, and that's abnormal. Right,
and that was really hard on those biddies, huh?
Oh yeah, that was real hard on them. That was real hard on them. So this year we'll probably be a little light.
Right.
When it's time to pin stags up. I don't know.
Right. We just see what you're working with, huh? After that.
Yeah, I definitely lost them. There ain't no doubt about it.
Right. Really no way around it. I mean, especially when you're dealing with some of these extreme conditions. Ain't like you can pick them up and bring them inside your house.
That's right.
They got to stay out there. You got to try to make the best that you can work with at that time, especially in those conditions. And I ask you that because I know, interviewing people from different parts of the country, they have to deal with different type of climate situations. Some deal with snow, some deal with a lot of rain, and some deal with some extreme heat, and some deal with some very dry. Is it dry out there where you at?
Not. It is dry, but not extremely dry. We're not in no high desert or anywhere like that. So it's. I would say it's pretty 4 consistent seasons.
Okay.
We get pretty normal.
Okay.
The 4 seasons, and I think that contributes to the health too. of the actual, chickens. I think the poultry out here, for the most part, that you'll find is going to be, they're going to be good looking
Right.
chickens and healthy and all of those things because of that.
Right. So tell me this, Ronnie. With young guys getting into the sport now, with all this access to information and all that, and I know we talked about a little of this. What kind of things? Tell me this. What would you have done different growing up? Is it anything that you would have done different,
Oh
growing
man,
up?
I would have done it. I would have done a bunch of different stuff. I would have stuck with chickens when I was younger and not got myself into a bunch of trouble like I did when I was a youngster. But
Oh,
that's a whole different. That's a whole different story for episode 2. But but growing up, I mean, chicken wise, I don't know. It's hard to say. I was surrounded with some pretty good guys growing up, chicken wise. So I don't know what the road would have been if I could have. I'm sure I could have been, learned more or whatever. My biggest advice probably to young guys nowadays would be, because I find that young guys want to ask you questions about things, whatever it is, breeding, pointing, and all those things.
right.
If they really want to know and they really love this sport and they really want to find out how to do something, they need to try to befriend some of these older guys that have been in it for a long time.
Right.
Go over their place.
Right.
Put in some work. Go over there a few weekends, water their birds, turn over dirt,
Right.
shovel some horse shit,
Right.
get your hands dirty,
Right.
make these guys love you,
Right.
and then they may want to show you and teach you
Right.
about what to do. But a lot of guys that really know a lot and have a lot of knowledge, and you come up as a young guy and just pop a question on them, they might tell you part of it, but you ain't gonna get the whole thing.
And then even if they do give you the whole thing, you probably ain't gonna know what to do with it anyway.
You won't. You're not gonna understand because you don't have the hands-on experience.
That's right.
You could tell somebody how to do something, and they could interpret that completely different if they don't have the hands-on experience themselves.
Right.
They haven't got their hands dirty. They're not gonna know what to do.
They're not gonna know what to do. That's exactly right. And that's the whole thing. I mean, like I said, this show is all about, just educating people on this journey. And a lot of times, a lot of guys want to take a shortcut and, try to jump ahead, and it doesn't work out, and they don't realize it don't work out until they get about, 5, 6, 7 years into the sport. And they realize that they just really running on a treadmill. It's probably because they didn't kind of skip some steps. They didn't skip some steps. And it kind of shows up later on. I always say, you're either gonna do it now or you're gonna do it later, but you're gonna do it. You can do it after you get a yard full of chickens and learn it, or you can learn it now as you starting to accumulate chickens. But this is a question I want to ask, and I know something that I did. We talked about it last week. A lot of times when you get in this sport, and I don't know if you have done it or not, you go out there, you see good birds from one guy, so you want to get a couple of those. Then you see another guy with some really good birds, and you want to get some of those. You see another guy with some really good, and over time, I'm not saying all this is in a 1 year period, but over time, and you start accumulating a lot of birds, and then you start to realize that all of these birds don't operate the same way. That's how I learned the hard way. Before I realized it, I had birds from all kinds of people, all different lines and everything, and I was having so many problems because I was feeding the same amount to everybody, and some of them was really fat, some of them you could feel the breastbones like a blade, and I used to like, man, this is just like working the death out of me because I always had an issue. But what I realized is I had too many bloodlines from too many different people and did not really know the history or what the requirements was to raise that particular bloodline. And I guess because I came in the sport and I got that fever, you get the fever. You see a good bird, oh, I'm going to get a pair from him. You see something else, oh, I'm going to get a pair from him. Then you will look out in your yard, I call it Skittles. You look out in your yard, you got a yard full of Skittles. You got 16 colors out there, all these different birds from these different bloodlines. And I learned later. I didn't learn at the beginning. I learned later because I didn't have anybody, I didn't have anybody to tell me, hey, you don't need to be getting all them bloodlines to start off with. Get you 1 or 2 good pair, and just kind of focus on that and learn those. Because you can kind of, and some past guests had said the same thing, you can kind of take any bloodline and kind of get it to where you want it. It might take a long period of time, but you can kind of get it to where you want it with selective breeding. Do you agree with that?
I believe that if you start off with something good, you can get it to where you want it. You can change it and tweak it a little bit and make it the way you want it. But I think it has to. I think you got to start. It's got to be solid to start off.
Got you.
I truly believe that wherever they come from,
right?
If you don't start off with solid ones, there's no way. It'd be real tough.
That's right.
To make them solid. You get them and try to turn them into something that they weren't to begin with.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I think it's important to start off with a good foundation. Wherever they come from, that's what you have to start off with, man. You got to start off with a strong foundation and then be selective as you maintain them. Then you can tweak them. You can always tweak them a little bit and make them your own if you want them a little higher station, select the little longer legged ones or whatever. You can always make them your own, but they got to start off with good, solid brood pens, good, solid bloodline.
Good, solid bloodlines. Now, tell me this. Say new guys coming into sport. What do you think they should learn? What do you think they should put more attention on first? I know a lot of guys definitely, like you say, focus on brood pens. They want to go out here and get the baddest birds from the biggest breeders, right? That's always typically step one. But if I would have learned, I would have did that. Definitely go out there and get good birds, period, point blank. I don't think you should skimp on that. But I think also, too, with me doing that and not having enough knowledge at the beginning, I almost like wasted some money at the beginning. Because I kind of bought birds that was actually better than me at the time. And I think I probably should have still went out and got the good birds, but then immediately jumped and focused on getting knowledge about health. I was spending so much time worrying about bloodlines and confirmation and all that kind of stuff. I didn't spend enough time focusing on the health aspect of it. Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you pretty much said it yourself. I mean, everything that there is to say about that. The best advice I could give somebody that's coming into the sport would be invest in some solid bloodlines.
Right.
Don't worry about raising 100 or 50. Raise 20 or 30. A small number that is manageable, that you can take good care of.
Right.
And the next thing that you probably haven't heard anybody talk about this. Mm-hmm. The next thing that I'm going to tell you that a person should do that, wants to get, raise good, healthy chickens is set their chicken yard up accordingly. Set it up, draw up a little plan or whatever of how you're going to set it up.
Right.
Because you need to set your yard up in a way that it's going to be easy for you to take good care of your chickens. Mm-hmm. The easier it is to take care of your chickens, mm-hmm. the better care you're going to take of them.
That's right. That's right.
If you have a pen here and your other pen is 150 yards away over there, and then you got another one over here and over there,
right?
And your water hose is way over there, and you can't reach, and you can't get that one watered. And these 3 are easy to water, but those 5 over there, man, I'll water those every 3 days because and I gotta go all the way over there.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
Set your chicken yard up in a way that it's manageable for you to take care of them, and you'll take good care of them because it'll be easy for you to take care of them. Where you got them, so you can just water, boom, 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 go down the line, and they're all right there. You water and you feed, and you could. And another thing that you want to do every day when you go out and feed your chickens, mm-hmm. you want to go and look in that pen. Don't just go in there and throw feed and run to the next one and throw feed and run to the next one.
Right.
You should be looking at those chickens every single day because they'll give you warning signs of when they ain't feeling good or they got something going on.
Right.
You go in there and look at them and they're not as happy as they were the day before.
Right.
You probably should pull that chicken out and take a look at him. Maybe he's got bugs or maybe he's crawl bound or maybe something's going on with him.
Right. That's exactly right. And I'm telling you that thing about setting that chicken yard up, that makes complete sense because I was setting mines up as I was acquiring more birds. Never really sat down never really sat down and thought it all out. And that's what, you know, you end up working yourself to death. You know, if you're dedicated, you're going to drag that hose over there to them other 5 every day. But the deal is, if you put some thought into it and planned it, it'll be a lot easier to water those 5 if you set your yard up a little bit different. But that's what I did, man. I worked myself to death, and I was setting the yard up as I was acquiring birds. I would get a bird and didn't have a pin for him and say, oh, I'll get one tomorrow. I'll build it. I'm just throwing them over here for right now. And then you get a pin 2-3 days later. But then it ain't really all set up, man. Your yard is all scattered about. So that's some good advice. Know your area that you got to work with. See how much space you have. Determine what size pins you want. See how many pins you can fit in that area, or how many tie cords, or how many fly pins. Draw it all out so you can know exactly how I'm going to set this thing up.
It's quality and not quantity. You don't need to raise a bunch. Raise a few really good ones. That's all you need.
That's all you need. That's exactly right. Well, Ronnie, I'm going to tell you, man, it's been good. We over an hour and a half right now on this interview. I know it probably don't seem like that.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh, time flies when you're having fun, man. We had a lot of guests. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing your journey with us, your experience. It helps a lot. I mean, that's what this is all about, man. This journey to the pit is educate the next generation, regardless of how old they are, because all newcomers ain't 14 years old. Some newcomers are 30 and 40 years old. You know, they come in the game late. But this information like this is very, very vital. You know, I ask all the guests that's watching, share it, because educating, the more people we can educate, the better off it's going to be for the breed. The better care we can take care of these birds, regardless of who yard they're on, the better we can make a better selection, breed the birds better, care for the birds better. It's just going to make it better all throughout the whole sport. You know, just because the guy's in California, if he can make better birds in California, you never know. Them California birds might end up in Kentucky somewhere, or vice versa. So,
they do all the time.
That's right. Educating everybody in the whole sport actually allows the sport to be elevated to a whole nother level. Genetically, health, education, all of that kind of stuff. It makes it easier. It makes it more entertaining, more enjoyable. And also it brings more, it drives less people out of the sport. A lot of guys get frustrated and they're not doing good is because they lack the education, or they lack the resources to get the education. Then they want to throw in the towel after 5 years or 10 years or whatever the case is. They want to throw the towel in because they didn't have access, like you say. They didn't have access to this big timer or this long, you know, this guy that's been in the sport a long time. So I'm just hoping that, guys, when y'all watch these interviews, share these interviews. There's a lot of groups out there that we can share these interviews in. I'm not a part of all those groups, but share the interviews to your page. Share it to these groups, because this education helps everybody. Because
absolutely,
we all know we can get good genetics, but this sport is hurting on every other aspect. You know, good genetics is always right around the corner, or right not too far from the post office. You can get good genetics. But what the sport is lacking right now is the education of the care, the raising, the breeding, all that kind of stuff is important. And the more we educate, the better off this whole sport will be. So,
another thing that would help out greatly is if we just can overlook our differences, whether they be political, religious, whatever,
that's right,
and look at the one common denominator that we all have.
Yep.
We all love these chickens.
And
if we came together just on that alone,
yep,
man, it'd be a powerful force. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I really appreciate you having me on your show here. You know, I felt like I wasn't unworthy. You know, I'm just a small backyard guy, but I really appreciate you having me on. And one thing I want to say, anybody in the Turlock area down there needing feed, go check out my boy at Elite Feed, and they'll take care of you.
I got you.
They got quality feed at competitive pricing. Elite Feed, check them out, guys.
All right, well, Ronnie, man, you have a good night. And guys, again, don't forget to share this interview. You know, it'll be posted to my page. It'll also be posted to Journey to the Pit fan page. Share the interview in groups. You know, we need to teach and learn from each other. So get it out there. We'll be having another guest next Friday. I'll be posting it on Monday. Ronnie, again, I greatly appreciate you coming on and sharing your information with us, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'll talk to you soon. I always close the video out with the last phrase is always stay focused, stay positive, and stay blessed. And I'll see y'all guys next Friday. Thanks a lot, Ronnie.
All right. Much love to everybody. Keep them growing.
I appreciate it, brother. Good night.